Curtis, hello.
Hey, Michael, how are you doing?
I'm very well indeed. Curtis Jenkins is a highly knowledgeable project management executive with a lot of experience in creating and developing PMO organizations and also in leading high performance teams. People see Curtis as a business ambassador who can build the kind of trust-based relationships that you need to create if you want to make change happen in organizations. But principally, I think of Curtis as an accomplished PMO executive, and he currently works managing portfolios of business and IT projects with a global team working for him. And that's why I wanted to talk with Curtis today about working with a PMO. So welcome to the show, Curtis.
For having me. I'm excited about being here.
It's great to have you here. And before we get properly started on this, I think we just need to set the scene for people who aren't as familiar as they might be with PMOs. And different people have, I guess, a different view of what a PMO is. So can you tell us in your the way that you work with PMOs, what a PMO is?
Okay, so first, let me give maybe more of a formal definition.
Okay.
A project management office, or PMO, is a group or department that defines, maintains, and ensures project management standards across an organization. It can also be referred to as a portfolio management office, a program management office, what have you.
Okay.
And it could be both internal or external. You've heard about project management as a service.
Yeah.
But for me, it should be the go-to organization for all things projects, and the entire organization should see you as such. You know, where to go when you want to have an organized and disciplined way of getting things done.
That's interesting because you led with the standards piece, but
Yep.
then very quickly moved on to a focus on PMO as a service provider.
Yep.
Do you see any conflict between those two roles that the PMO has?
Well, I don't, right? I think one of the things you have to do is, yes, you have standards.
Hmm.
And I think we all should have standards, but don't lead with those standards.
Yeah.
You know, one of my project management philosophies, I have a couple. One is speed over methodology. I'm never going to talk about methodology to the business. You know, people say, hey, do you do agile projects? Well, I do, but I'm not going to talk to you about it. I'm just going to get it done quickly, right? With resources that I have.
Yeah.
You know, and then the other thing is, my belief is that and I tell this to my team, we don't manage projects, we manage stakeholders. And I watched one of your previous videos that talked about stakeholder management, and I couldn't agree more. I
Mm.
mean, you have to bring people along in all facets, in all parts of the organization to get things done.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the bottom line. It's getting stuff done. So yeah, I mean, you kind of push the standards aside, just get it done and work with the business and the culture to do what you do best, you
Yeah.
know, in your organized and disciplined manner.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us on, I guess, to the next question, which follows logically. Having defined what a PMO is, they are expensive. They are, if you like, seen as an overhead to the business. So what's the value that they bring? Why, if I'm a senior business person and I haven't yet created a PMO, why would I invest in a PMO for my organization?
Well, you know, if you already have the thought that PMOs are expensive, then the PMO has not done their job.
Hmm.
So, you know, when you're leading and building a PMO, you have to go in it with, what are you going to deliver as value? And how can you pay for yourself? And how can you be seen as an organization that can pay for itself, right?
Hmm.
So the value of an organization, the value of a PMO helps the organization with risk management. And I'm not picking all the different areas, but if you think about risk management, if you don't have a PMO and a set of standards in the way that you deliver in an organized and disciplined manner, then, you know, you can do it on your own. You can do it without that.
Hmm.
You won't if you've never worked with a PMO, you won't even be able to know the leakages that you have in the organization
Mm,
around, trying to get things done without using a project management office or standards.
yeah.
So can you imagine a building that's being built? And well, think about project management where it started with its roots in construction management, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to organize all these parts to an end. But could you imagine that a building is being built without the right talent, without the right order of things, without any risk management associated with it, and the cost would be astronomical. So when we
Mm,
talk about the value that a PMO brings, you can really help the business streamline and focus, especially if you're tied to the organization strategy, to really get things done in a quick manner.
yeah.
And I think that's part of the big value that you have to look at as a PMO.
Yeah. I like the picture you conjure because it's kind of how I think of PMOs. Kind of historically, the PMO was just the office where the project manager and their team worked out of. And the project manager would have perhaps a coordinator, an administrator, someone to do the planning or whatever, and they'd just be in an office and they'd work out of it. And that has now grown into a much wider remit. And those services, I like your focus on, particularly on managing the risk, because project managers will be managing the risk in their project, but I think the PMO can see how that fits into the wider context. But it seems to me that not all PMOs manage to achieve that kind of relationship with their stakeholders and that service to the projects that delivers the value. So if that's true, if you agree with that's true, what are some of the pitfalls? Why do some PMOs sometimes not work?
Well, first of all, they don't work if they have insufficient authority.
Mm,
And so if you don't have an executive sponsor, you're done.
yeah.
Right. I mean, you're lucky if you hang around, because most PMOs fail within the first 3 years, I'm sorry, of building a PMO,
Mm,
but they start to fade over time because they don't have the authority or an executive sponsor.
yeah.
The next thing is you have to have a reputation for delivering and not be seen as a police organization. We talked about standards, right?
Yeah.
I remember once in my career, there was this uh, project management office, and I worked in it as a consultant, and I had to bring people to PMO gates.
Mm,
And I had to build in the cost for people to develop uh, to pay for me to basically tell them what to do. I could see where they saw that as a tax, right? They had to
yeah.
add 30% to their costs. And I thought there's so much ways that we can do this better.
Yeah.
And so you have to make sure that you have uh, that you are providing value, but you have to look at it not as a cost, and you can't push people to do things. Take tools and templates.
Mm,
Um, they are forms of communications, not something that you impose on somebody to fill out, because sometimes I think you miss the engagement because
yeah.
you just check the box.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that I've done is develop over the years 7 simple steps, just 7 simple steps to make it easy for project managers and the organization to say, look, we're not going to put all this high value cost onto you. We're going to give you high value time. We're going to give you your time back. We're going to get you more money back.
Yeah.
So the other thing is invest in a philosophy and good talent. um, PMOs are often seen as people who don't know the business, junior project managers, and it
Mm,
turns the business off. And these are some of the reasons that I see in my career why PMOs fail.
yeah. I'm particularly interested in the first reason you gave, the whole thing about executive sponsorship,
Yeah,
because I know from my experience, if you can't get enough senior level of experience, support for a given change in an organization, then the whole organization will not believe it's worthwhile change.
that's right.
And I think putting a PMO into an organization is really a change project in itself.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in your thoughts about how do you campaign to get that level of sponsorship from the top of the organization? What are a few tips there?
Yeah. So it's a good point, because I would say that I've been working with my current sponsor, boss, for the last 3 companies. I wouldn't call it years. It was many years. But first of all, you need someone that first understands the value of project management. If you have to sell
Mm.
on the value of project management to that particular sponsor, it's going to be harder,
Yeah.
right? So that's the first thing. So let's just assume you got past that and you're working with that sponsor.
Mhm.
The other thing is you have to develop the trust with that sponsor, that you are the go-to person, consistently delivering and evolving.
Mm.
And so I would tell people, figure out a way to provide uh, value early and often, and then work with that particular sponsor, not with it being about the PMO, but with it being about them and the
Yeah.
organization. I mean, that's key. It's not about you and your projects. It's about how this business is going to run and how you are part of that equation.
Yeah.
In my experience, even with my executive sponsor, it was companies that just said, you know what, we don't want no stinking project management. And I remember this one particular company was going to dissolve my position
Mm.
and the whole PMO. And at the same time, I was leading an overall divestiture
Yeah.
that was really that the business really needed to get done, because they were highly levered and they needed cash.
Yeah.
So my sponsor and I went to the leadership, to the COO and the CEO, and we said, well, you can let us go,
Mm.
but what would you say to the owners that you didn't get this project done? You didn't get this divestiture done when they need the cash for this.
Yeah.
And so it ended up being a retention bonus and an extension on the PMO. So, so you have to be able to show, listen, if I am valuable, we are valuable, and you need somebody that's going to help you get to that table to have that conversation.
And I think that speaks very much to something which I believe, which is that one of the things you said earlier is that PMOs are sometimes seen as full of junior project managers with little experience.
Yeah.
But the way I see the PMO as a business unit going is to be increasingly professionalized. I mean, your evidence right in front of us now, but I think there are now a lot of people who are able to build a successful career based not just on being a project manager who ends up in a PMO, but someone who identifies themselves as principally as a PMO practitioner and a PMO professional who happens to also have done some project management in their career.
Yeah. I will tell you, I remember when I came to grips about what I wanted to be when I grew up. So the first time I had the crossroads of the technical track or the what I would call the people track, the management track. I had a mentor kind of tell me, you would be great for project management. So then I took that track. The second thing I had to come to
Just out of
grips with,
curiosity, did that mentor see that as a people or a technical track?
well, the way that he posed it to me, I was an application developer.
Okay.
And he posed it to me in a way that made me feel like I'd be sitting in some room coding versus getting things done and doing a lot and working with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And given my personality, that's what I like. I love project management because I get to have so many different experiences, right?
Yeah.
And so so then I said, okay, I want to do the project management thing. The
Mhm.
second thing I had to come to realization with is that project managers typically don't grow up to run the companies.
Mm.
So, I was very ambitious at the time. I was looking to be a CFO. And I remember I used to talk to the CFO of the company that I worked for, and he would come out at 3 o'clock every day and smoke a cigarette. And then when I would just talk to him and see him, I say, maybe that's not something I want to do. It just seems like such a high pressure job. Um, but when I realized that project managers don't grow to run the companies, I accepted that I wanted to be who I am.
Yeah.
And so I embraced project management more. But then I realized I can be a projectpreneur. I can run my own company with what I know with project management. And so
Yeah.
I focused on not only building my career, but building PMOs to focus on being more of basically a business function,
Yeah.
just like supply chain, just like finance, so
Absolutely.
that I can help develop and deliver on the overall strategy of the organization.
Yeah. And through that, you've gained years of experience now figuring out how to make a PMO succeed and I guess succeed pretty quickly, get up and running quickly. So what's your formula for organizing a PMO effectively so that it can succeed and deliver the value that we've discussed?
Yeah, so great question. This is my favorite. Like, organizing
Yeah.
for success is something that I always talk about. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about even going to war, right? Everybody has a role to play, and we all see the same outcome. So the first thing I do, it's my selection of project managers.
Mhm.
And I am not trying to figure out all your technical acumen for project management.
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out whether you are great at stakeholder management, because I can teach you
Yeah.
what I call the science, right? So I trademarked the art and science of vision to reality. And I
Nice.
actually have a book coming out this year with that title. And so I focus on, are you more of an artist than a scientist? Because I
Yeah.
can teach you the science part easier than I can teach you the art part. And so I work with project managers, bringing them in. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll bring you in as a contractor first, try before you buy,
Yeah.
just to give you an opportunity. But I've been able to build some amazing teams by getting good project managers. Let me take a step back. The
Okay.
first thing, and I should have started with this, is I like to run what's called a PMO on demand.
Okay.
Many of the organizations that I've worked with, or that I've worked with in PMOs, we talked earlier, they're seen as a tax, they're seen as a burden, they're
Yeah.
seen as a cost. And so I like a flexi model. And I look at and benchmark against the number of people I have in my organization and what's that cost to serve the organization. And I try to drive that cost down.
Yeah.
The other thing is, businesses often don't want to pay for project managers or project management time. So if I don't have a whole bunch, then there's this whole demand. They're forced to pay me, and I have the line of sight between the cost of the project manager and the project. So I have a small team of project managers, and I have full-time, I'm sorry, contractor project managers that I get on demand.
Yeah.
But the project managers that I have, you must have a person who is strong in portfolio management. I mean, somebody that actually loves it, right?
Yeah.
Um, you have to have people in your organization that have Six Sigma and lean backgrounds, because a lot of projects end up really being process improvements or efficiency plays. You gotta have an administrator. And I mean, with that being their role, and I have an administrator that I've also taught to be an auditor. So the two parts to that: one, most project managers don't like administration. So I try to relieve that burden, right? Um, and I try to relieve the burden to the business with the project being project administrator helping with that. I mean, it's a necessary evil, but you got to have it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I have that person focus on being an auditor. Let's look at the portfolio with the portfolio manager, and we can can measure whether these people met the claims that they had in their business cases.
Yeah.
And I think that's key to going back to the business and adjusting how we do business cases, or somebody, just because they were the loudest voice, didn't deliver on a strategy that they said they were going to deliver on.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's a few sets of roles that you must have. One, you need a budget leader, somebody who focuses on the dollars. So you can still have somebody who manages projects, but that's a smaller part of their job, because you got to measure the dollars and keep track of them at all times, and train people and develop good models. And these are the standards that we talked about earlier. They feel good to have, but you're not imposing them on the business.
I think that's so important. I was talking with someone the other day about sponsorship, and we were agreeing that sponsors should be responsible for the budget, but very few sponsors have the skills to properly monitor and interrogate the budget. And having that skill set on demand within the PMO seems to me a valuable part of the service that you can offer. I like that a lot.
Well, the person that I have now services the entire organization with capital. When we're doing the next year CapEx and OpEx, or capital dollars and operational dollars and projects, they're involved integrally in helping us understand where we spent our money before and how we should be thinking about spending our money going forward. But there's two other parts to it. Vendor management.
Yep.
Oftentimes you work with these big organizations and they bring their project managers. Well, I force our vendors to give me 3 project managers to interview at minimum, because they're, even though they do what they do with you, they have to work with me and my stakeholders. So they have to work with our standards. And then finally, and this is a big piece, this is the change management leader. Bringing solutions to the people, we can do that easily, but bringing people to the solution, that's your stakeholder goal right there. So that's the success of your project. So that's the organization that I like to have. Now, I didn't talk about business analysts and relationship managers. Very important. You got to have them. Yeah. But this is how we organize, and how I call organizing for success. That's my project management office army.
Fantastic. So fundamentally, it's about having the right professionals in the right roles and letting them just do their jobs and work together.
Right. That's right. That is correct.
So how quickly could I deploy, if I could recruit the right people, how quickly could I expect those right people to deploy a project management office and actually have it running smoothly?
Well, so, with the current job that I have right now, I was able to so it started in 2014, and up to now, there was the model that I used was the Gartner PMO maturity model, going from reactive to effective innovation. And I was taking a look at that recently, and it's not a linear journey.
No.
Right. It's a journey that happens with different things, but having a plan, my plan was to be the vice president of PMO in 2016. So 2 years after being there, it didn't happen until 2020. So, but I had the plan, and I still followed that plan, but I adjusted with the organization. So it's ever evolving.
Yeah.
But establishing the PMO happened within the first year. So, and again, having a sponsor. So I established it in the PMO, but I would say it didn't really get the business's attention until about 2 years after.
Okay.
And that's like, you guys are the go-to organization. We're not going to do any shadow projects. We're going to come to you.
Everything goes through one PMO.
That's right.
Yeah. I think that's really useful, isn't it? Because for someone thinking, what, we really do need to establish a PMO, to have a realistic view of what the timelines can be, that you can have something worthwhile in a year, but there's probably another couple of years of real hard graft to demonstrate the case and to build the relationships before the business starts to really trust you. I think that's really interesting.
that's the key word, trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything we do, has to be targeted on building trust, whether it's with our stakeholders, our team members, and the governance structures. And I think I find it particularly interesting the way you've combined that kind of audit, that oversight role with the administration role, which for me seems to lift that role from a very junior role that people are just going to get fed up with very quickly into a proper professional role that is a springboard for moving on in your career in a positive way.
Yeah.
So you've taken us on an interesting journey all the way through to how to build and win acceptance for your PMO, and the fact that you've now achieved that VP title says what this is all about, really, which is about professionals delivering such a good service to the business that it recognizes them at the highest level. Perhaps we can kind of end with any kind of tips, hints, or key takeaways that you could offer my audience.
There's a few that I already said. I talked about speed over methodology.
Yep.
And I talk about not managing projects, but managing stakeholders.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that I tell people is steal. Well, be a thief.
Yeah.
And when I learned how to be a thief, it was more so that what I figured out was that my organization, or several organizations, would hire very high-powered consulting organizations.
Yeah.
And they would come in and they would do their job and they would leave. But one of the things that I noticed is their presentations and their communication captured the attention of all the C-level executives.
Yeah.
And so when I would see these things resonate, I would take these items, these artifacts, and I would work with my team to incorporate the communicate. I call them tools for communication.
Yeah.
Although they're tools and templates. So that's one thing. If you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely.
There's so many things out there. Work with your team, but work with something that works with the culture of your organization.
Yeah.
And it will elevate how people see you and elevate the professionalism of what they see you, because they're paying these high-powered consultants. You should behave like a high-powered consultant within your organization.
I mean, you've got your catchphrase. One of mine is adopt or adapt.
Yeah.
You find something useful, you either adopt it or you adapt it until it works for you. Because I think of project management as a highly creative profession, because we can take a tool that we're aware of but doesn't fit the use case we have, and we can adapt it and create a new tool that then becomes part of our toolkit for the rest of our careers. And I like that philosophy of stealing. And and having been one of those high-powered consultants at the start of my career, I can attest to the fact that we did spend a lot of time crafting the message and the presentation of the message, and that does have a value to us, but it's really good that it can have a lasting value to the business that we're serving, because ultimately they're paying for it. So people like you should go in and steal it.
That's right.
Or actually, since your organization has already paid for it, I don't think it's stealing. I think it's just using it, maybe not with permission.
Put it in your company's template.
Absolutely. And you know what? The other thing I tell people is, if you steal from one source, maybe that's plagiarism.
Yeah. Right.
But if you take from a number of sources, then that's just research.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. I love it.
So if you just take PwC stuff, that's stealing. If you take PwC stuff and you mix it with Deloitte's and KPMG's, and you form something that actually that fits your culture, and I think that's something that that you're right. That's where perhaps the big consultancies sometimes fall down, is they they don't recognize enough the difference in the cultures between the different organizations they work with.
Right.
Whereas embedded in a culture, you can then fix it. That's great. I love that. Any other tips?
If you're building a PMO, be careful of your language and don't chase the new.
Yeah.
I mentioned about that earlier, right? Going into a business meeting, talking about running an agile methodology. Who cares about that?
Yeah.
Right. I once had a senior leader says, we need to do this project and we need to use the agile methodology, because they had a conversation with somebody else at another company.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, do you realize that the people that work for you in their day-to-day jobs have to become much more available because it's an iterative process? So give me 80% of your people's time. Well, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, let me figure out how to get it done. Don't tell me how, don't give me no methodology and things like that, right?
Yeah.
But, there's also, you've heard of digitization, and you've heard project management, talking about product management. Don't bring that to your business. Learn it, understand it. Don't be so fast to say we got this new thing, because you're going to start over from scratch and building trust. Get away from those methodologies. Focus on getting things done quickly within the culture that you have.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I love the way that you almost deprecate the idea of adopting one methodology or another and being specific. Right. I think as soon as you start dividing the world into halves, in the agile half and the predictive half or anything like that, you lose all the subtlety, which is where the real value lies. So yeah. I think that's fantastic. Curtis, thank you very much for everything you've told us. There will, I'm sure, be people who are interested to learn more about you and perhaps get in touch with you professionally. How can people find out more about you and contact you?
Sure. So they can definitely find me on LinkedIn. You can find me. You can find me on Facebook, Curtis Jenkins. You can find me on Instagram at the Curtis Jenkins. Right. And you can also find my website. My personal website is www.cljassoc.com.
Associates.
Associates, that's right.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'll put all of that into the description so that you can click on it. Obviously, it's come up on screen while we've been talking, but that's fantastic. Curtis, all that is left really is for me to say thank you very much for sharing some of your insights about PMOs with my audience. It's been a huge pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure for me as well.
Please do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. I'll be creating loads more great project management content, so please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of it. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.